All right, everybody, welcome to the Relatively Relevant AI podcast. We have with us today Mariah Hay, co-founder and CEO of Allboarder, and a friend, someone that we all have worked with before. Mariah, it's great to see you. How you doing today?
Doing really well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thanks for coming. As always, we're not 100% sure where it's going to go, but for those that are tuning in, we are going to talk about lazy leadership today. There have been some recent announcements that are just too good to pass up to talk about. So we want to dig into those. I know before we get started, though, Lori had a question she wanted to ask you. And actually, I'm kind of curious to hear the answer to it, too. So, Lori, what do you got for her?
Well, just so everyone who doesn't or hasn't had the privilege of working with Mariah, Mariah and I worked together at a company, probably over a decade ago. But she is an amazing leader, an amazing creative designer, technologist, really. From my experience, you have just a very curious mind and you're always really looking to see how can we make things better, not only for the specific users, but really the whole ecosystem of people around us. So with that, I thought it might be fun if you were to share with us, like, what's a cool project or what's, something that you're proud of that you've worked on within your career that gives a little insight into the type of problems that you like to solve.
That is a really great question. I'd have to say one of my favorite projects that I ever worked on was at a company called Pluralsight that went public in 2018. I was a product leader there at the time. Prior to that IPO, we had acquired a few different companies to try to integrate them with our online learning platform for technologists, which is what they did. It was kind of like Netflix, content for technologists. And we wanted to create a smart platform. Everybody's hot on AI now, but early AI, we thought we could use to ask somebody a set of questions and go, gee, what's like a specific content stream for you to learn so that you're not relearning things you already know. And so we had acquired this company, Smarterer, and I worked very closely to provide leadership to that team to integrate with our catalog of courses and create a smart testing platform at that point. And I like to think that it really helped us in terms of creating a moat against our competition and helped contribute to the success of the company at the time. So, but it was just the people were the smartest that we worked with. It was just such a great, creative, connected team. But I think that's always the secret sauce, right? Is, you're really empowered to work well on something together.
I mean, and that's the rare find, right? Is when you find the right team, the right people, the right energy exchange, the right environment, right? That's what we're all striving for. I think anyone who's in technology understands that it ultimately is about the people. So I like that example.
All right. So we are lucky enough that there have been some announcements made. I don't know. Well, we might even be in real time. Hell, for all I know. But Intuit did us a favor and made a lovely announcement today that Mariah has put up an awesome LinkedIn post about. And so I think I'm just going to start there. Like, I just want to hear kind of your take on what they announced and why it lit a fire, and let's see where we go.
So I was really disappointed. It came to my attention because somebody that was like a friend in my network who works at Intuit said, I'm really disappointed because our CEO just said that of the 1,800 people that they just laid off, over 1,000 of them were fired for cause that they just weren't cutting it. And I know that these people are smart, dedicated, hardworking people, and it makes me mad. And it really struck me because so many people get like, there are these firings in the tech companies and people just kind of suck it up and go, it was a nice ride and like looking for my next thing. And nobody's getting angry about the way people are being treated. And she expressed this kind of support of her colleagues who she felt had been wronged, which is really brave because people don't have any power in the US. Companies can fire you for no reason. There's no protection. In fact, companies can like make your life absolutely miserable if they want to legally. And so I wrote a post about how I thought that it was really disingenuous that they posted that because they had their best quarter ever last quarter and they planned on growing even more. And how could it be even possible that you have at the same time a layer of managers that aren't handling performance issues, but yet you have this like banner quarter it just it doesn't add up. And so I think the gaslighting these employees they had just let go by saying they aren't good enough is really, really a terrible look.
Now,
I
I,
like
I
your,
also have to say I am an Intuit user. So if my Intuit account starts freaking out, we're going to know why, because we're talking about this. Just put it out there. Lori, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, I actually am really glad you voiced that. I have been part of corporations that have done layoffs as well. And it is really interesting the way that they come about, not necessarily logistical, but much more of really, right, human resources, and as if people are people, as if they're just little items to be added or subtracted from a P&L. Right. So I actually like that you called that out. And I think that's really interesting that you, two things. One, that you're right. Why aren't more people angry? We should be really angry, because it's like, it is really, in my view, that one is that people should be angry. And two is it really is about leadership. Like, everyone who I've ever had who's been on my team, like, if you're underperforming and that goes on for more than a quarter, 2 quarters, like, unless there's some big life circumstances, it's 100% on me as a leader. If those people aren't performing, and that goes all the way up to the CEO. So I guess that brings us to our topic of what do you like? Well, not how is that an example of lazy leadership, because it feels like it's really, really obvious. But why are we seeing this trend of lazy leadership? Maybe that should be the question is it just feels like people are moving along, and that, like, that personal accountability of leaders and being responsible for people is slowly dwindling, at least in the US.
We're way out of whack ethically. We're so out of whack. Companies will push the legal limits of what they can do. And because we don't have protections in the US like they do in Europe around jobs, companies pretty much do whatever they want. And the only thing that keeps them in line is the outrage of the public. Well, people are becoming desensitized to a lot of bad behavior across the board, not just in companies, but politically, people just not upholding integral standards. And so companies are really pushing their luck on this by doing all these firings and blaming employees for being fired, which is it's ridiculous. It's just so mentally ridiculous. I think that was like we started to see this pushback on LinkedIn today with even employees speaking up who put themselves at risk. But it is absolutely lazy leadership to not stand up and say the buck stops with me and here's the truth of what is happening. But I also think it's a too big to fail mentality. I mean, Intuit is a monster. They have lots of lobbyists that push legislation to keep products of theirs in place, like TurboTax. I myself have a Credit Karma account, which is one of theirs. They just sunset Mint. And of course, everybody uses their software in small and medium businesses for accounting purposes. So like there's really no other contender. You can't vote with your dollars as much as you used to. And so I think companies just keep getting bolder, and the lazy leadership takes the easy path to revenue. I think.
So you're talking lazy leadership at the highest levels, but there's also, we've all seen it. There's also this epidemic of lazy leadership, it kind of in the middle of the organizations. Yeah. Which ends up, I think, sometimes creating a culture of either acceptance or desensitization. Like, this is just the way it is, because the behemoth of the entity, the weight of the entity is so heavy that they're not empowering individuals to make change, and they're not empowering teams to make change. So the only place that really those decisions get made is kind of at the top. And as a result, there isn't a way in many cases, I think, for individuals to have the impact that they should be enabled to have in an organization. Hence why people leave managers, they don't leave companies, right? Like that whole thing. How do you change it though?
I think that you have to start with equipping people leaders with leadership skills to manage others in an empathetic way. And that doesn't mean in a way that doesn't get results. I think people conflate those two things. You can be a highly empathetic and attuned leader, and you're going to get better results because you can spot things that are going sideways earlier. You can suss out the root causes of those. So we take performance, for example. Anybody that's led people knows that, like, we all really need a staff psychologist on hand, but we don't have that. And so it falls to us. And that's, that's a huge understanding human psychology and being able to troubleshoot what's going on is a big skill set. So we throw people into these leadership roles and they have no preparation for them. And the people business partners who are also strapped mostly are just trying to help handle performance issues or personnel issues. They might not even have the training. And so I think if I were to start somewhere, I would say you need to teach people how to understand these fundamental management skills of performance coaching and understanding performance. And it all comes, that also goes hand in hand with hiring the right team and understanding different skill sets and how they pair together and looking at the personality of what you're trying to create. And then on the flip side of it, like the business side, really creating clarity and structure so that people can do their best work and they're not pulled into the chaotic vortex of this project, that project, what takes precedence, what comes first, which is the stuff that is just burning everybody out entirely.
I agree with you. Like there's a lot there of it's a lazy leadership of everybody all the way up. Of there's a lot of fear, right? There's a fear from, well, now that I'm in this level, I actually have to keep the peace here and appease somebody else who also may not know what they're doing, but I have to just do what they're saying so I'm not disrupting. But what ends up happening is because a leader up here thinks that this is what's most important, and the leadership down the hierarchy isn't, like, if they're saying this is important, they're not doing a good job negotiating loss for people. So it comes down to the people who are really performing the work, the practitioners, are bearing the weight of, I have all this stuff to do and nobody's helping take off and prioritize. It's almost like leaders are quarter by quarter, year by year, adding things. And they're not saying, oh yeah, we're not done with this initiative anymore, or we're not going to focus on that initiative anymore. It didn't work. Let's move it off. So it ends up being like a combination of fear of maybe not knowing what to do. But then also I just think of the weight and how much it takes out from so many teams and so many practitioners, where it's all on them to like literally bear the brunt of the industrial organization.
Yeah, 100%. It is. And that's why you have this burnout, or people become yes people. They abandon any critical thinking skills they might have, and they just give up and say, just tell me what to do. Yeah. Just tell me what to do. And then they work nights, and then they work weekends. And it's just kind of, they feel stuck because then, it wasn't like this 3 or 4 years ago that, tech was hiring like crazy, but in a down cycle like what we are now, people are clinging to jobs because they're seeing so many layoffs, and they don't want to put themselves in a position where they won't have a position. Particularly when you are working with two income households, and maybe both people work in tech, like my partner and I were both in tech. And I've seen people get laid off twice in a year from different places. Like, it's just wild. And so the operating from the point of fear, and then the lazy leadership, people are just miserable. And I think that not only is it bad for people and the world, but like companies should really pay attention, because their products are going to start to suffer. Their businesses are going to start to decay. Because when you build a whole organization on a faulty foundation like that, which is a whole workforce of misery, like the other shoe is going to drop at some point soon. And, it's even like, so the company that I co-founded a year ago, it's with a couple of other former colleagues who advantageously weren't working in tech roles anymore because of this kind of stuff. And so I hope that the silver lining is that maybe people will start to create their own thing, and we'll have innovation that way. But it certainly is going to crush innovation within the corporations, for sure.
Well, I mean, has there really been a lot of it? Come on, we all worked in the organizations that they would come to us and say, we don't know how to innovate. So would you help us? Then we would help them. And then that flame of awesomeness would get crushed out by the BS politics and the next shiny object that came along. Like we've seen this for, I don't want to make us all sound old, but for decades. Like it's not like it's something new, right? And now you throw on top of that the fear and the speed at which everything's moving. You almost, I feel bad for some people that are stuck in that hierarchical, oh, the company doesn't really care about you because to them, you are a gear that can easily be swapped out, replaced, or displaced, right? There is none of that. So the entity itself doesn't seem to work with kind of the changes that we're seeing societally and technologically. I just don't know how organizations of that size, of Intuit or the big one, any of them that are that big, they can't pivot across years. How are they going to do it with the tech that's coming in now?
Well, so Mariah, tell us about Allboarder, the company that you founded, and what are some of the things that you feel like you're fundamentally doing different to avoid some of the pitfalls that are the corporate workplace today?
So there are some glaring opportunities for automating like tasks that people have to manually do. The thing that kind of got the ball rolling with this was new employee onboarding is pretty horrible in most companies. Size doesn't really seem to make a difference. It's more of the competent leadership makes a difference. But most companies don't really put a lot of thought into their onboarding, and HR is stuck in a space where onboarding just means get the administrative work done to get somebody in the door, and then we're done with onboarding. The people business partners that partner with the hiring managers, maybe they give the hiring manager a checklist saying do a couple of these things. But then again, we have these leaders in these roles that haven't been prepared. And so if they're not tenured, they don't really know what they're doing, and they're trying to like get people familiar with their job, with the projects, with the team. And it can take, weeks, if not months longer for a knowledge worker to feel like they've got their skis under them and they're effective in their role. And I just thought, gosh, what a waste. And it's a waste for the business, but I'm kind of on the like people side. And so I'm like, it's also a huge waste for the people who want to come in and do a great job. Like I have never met somebody that has more energy than when they start a job and they want to prove themselves and they want to, bond with their colleagues and do good work. And we like crush that out of the gate with bad onboarding. So I thought, well, what are the things that are preventing bad onboarding or preventing good onboarding? And a lot of it is there's no tool for a leader to templatize all of the meeting invites and all of the information. They do that manually every time a new person comes in, which is just a huge time suck. And then the people business partner just really, they know this is a problem, but they don't have time to help. And so I thought, well, let's give visibility to the people business partner, what this is, B, give them a tool to templatize it, and C, let them collaborate with their colleagues. So over time they can iterate and make it better and better. And they can focus the little time they do have on their onboarding for the new person. So anyway, we created this tool. I have, we've got kind of a beta application that we're getting people in, which is really exciting, but we're also starting to see some other opportunities to use it. Anytime you have to do a series of meeting invites and a bunch of knowledge sharing, it could be training, it could be a new company orientation, it could be OKR planning, it could be anything where you have that. We're seeing other use cases, but long story short, I'm excited to try to make, chip away and make one little piece of the bigger puzzle better for everybody if I can.
Well, it sounds like, right, with this opportunity, you are thinking about the people. You are thinking about, I agree with you. When people come in, like, you're like, I want to change the world with my new company. And then you don't really get to do anything for sometimes 3 months, sometimes 5 months, right? So I love that of using that excitement, right? And getting this stuff. And then also when we talk about lazy leadership, right? Like a lot of times I feel, and this is completely my opinion, is that leaders often take activity of work they have to do as I'm so busy, this is the important stuff. And what you're saying is, or what you're providing, right, is a way to say, well, I'm going to take off some of that stuff that's overloading you. So you actually have some room in your schedule to actually work on the people side of things, which is something that I think Chad and I are both really, really passionate about at DeepHumanX for that same reason is that it's actually the people who help your business move forward.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you all check it out, because I have been lucky enough to have a demo and see it. And from a leadership standpoint, I can see it making it much easier to manage the culture and the synchronization of a team across time. And so when Mariah talks about other use cases, I think she's underselling it. There's a lot of things, a lot of power in that tool. So please don't hesitate to reach out and ask to see it and volunteer to be part of the beta program. There's some wins in it for you if you do that. So as we wrap up, what I want to do is give the audience, at least from each of you two things that you think they could do today to start overcoming or avoiding turning into that lazy leadership. And I know I'm putting you on the spot, and I'll give you a couple of seconds. I'll fill the noise. I'll fill the void with a couple minutes of rambling to let you think. But just something actionable that you could say, hey, if you really are feeling the weight of the organization or feel like you're suffering inside of that organization, not getting the leadership they need, what is just one or two things that they could do that would, you think, put them on a path to releasing some of that pressure?
Okay, I've got two. So the first is if you're making a decision that's impacting an employee, a colleague, even the person you report up to, from an ethical standpoint, go like, would I treat my mom this way? Would I treat my mom this way? And then the second is, how do I want people to feel? So even in a layoff situation, say you have to lay somebody off, how do you want them to feel as they're going through this layoff experience? Should they be scared and unsure? Or do you want to try to do everything you can to give them clarity and support, even though it's a sucky situation? Like, no matter how you slice it, there's like the lazy path, which is just like, legally we're covered, and it leaves somebody feeling devastated for the next 12 months of their life. Or we can really like take care and do a few things differently. So, just really thinking through how do you want people to feel and then building around that. So those are my two.
Love it. Lori, what you got?
I'm going to add on a little bit. One of the things you said about would you treat your mom that way? I kind of went the opposite side of would your mom be proud of you? I wasn't thinking mom, but I was like, I really think that one thing that's missing in leadership today is we have all sorts of reports and efficiency and productivity reports, and we have no strategic plan around the people aspect of it. Like, are you giving yourself time to actually get yourself in the right headspace to make sure that if you're doing something like layoffs, that you are doing it in a way where you can have integrity with yourself, right? Thinking of, at the end of the day, can you feel good? And would you make your mom proud with the way you behaved, right? Like, thinking about people in that way and giving yourself actual time in your days to think about what is it that you want to contribute to your teams, whether it's your exec team, whether it's, your management team, whether it's the people reporting to you, whether it's, your children, like just really owning that there is a people component that we don't have room for in business. And like, that has to change. And then my second thing is much more tactical, which is, it's an actionable step of clear your calendar from everything. And this can be done either personally or professionally. Clear your calendar and then sit with yourself and say, what is the most important thing I want to contribute? And fill up, and then go through and fill up your tasks back like that and make sure that those are prioritized, because that can help you start to look at and drop and say, you know what, we've been meeting we've had this meeting as a carryover from the pandemic. Yes, there's still some of those that are happening. This one can drop off. So I feel like we need to get a little bit more purposeful as people, to just make sure that we are actually filling our time up with not busy work that we're pretending is important, that's really soul sucking, but actually focusing on the work that we want to do. So it'll release some of the fears that we have about we're not hitting our own goals.
Awesome. Awesome. Great actionable stuff for the audience. Appreciate you both. Mariah, thank you very much for taking time to hang with us today. I know we're going to do another episode right after this, but let's at least let the audience think that this was a one and done. But thank you very much for taking the time. It has been amazing to spend the time with you.
It's been a pleasure.